at that time, the differences in the country were not very much pronounced. And the three leaders we had at independence, or regional premiers that we had, were determined to work together. And the Prime Minister of the country, Sir Tafawa Balewa, was a true Nigerian who tended at the time to minimize the differences between the different peoples of the country. But of course, as time went on, the pluralism of Nigeria became increasingly apparent, and that brought its own challenges.
And that was the period immediately following independence, essentially between 1960 and 1965.
Yes, possibly I would say between 1960 and January 1966.
Right.
The period I would describe as the golden years of Nigeria, because both internally, the development, the pace of development internally in the regions was very impressive. The GDP growth rate at the time was in the neighborhood of 8%. And then externally, Nigeria was hugely respected internationally. At the United Nations, for example, Nigerian was appointed the first Third World commander of a UN peacekeeping force in the Congo. The late General Agui Ronse was that. And when in 1964 the United Nations faced a major crisis arising from disagreement between the Western group of countries led by the United States and the Eastern group of countries led by Soviet Union over Article 22 of the UN Charter, the three ambassadors who were called upon to resolve the crisis, one of them was the Nigerian ambassador, the Nigerian, the Japanese, and the Indian. Nigeria was a hugely respected country at the time. Nigerian passport was respected all over the world. And that, therefore, is a period that I would describe as the golden years of Nigeria. At the time, there was absolutely no fear that the country would backslide as it subsequently did. I think when the military intervened in governance in January 1966, that was the beginning of sliding back for Nigeria. The then chairman of CDC, Lord Howick, was on an official visit to Nigeria and had a meeting with the Prime Minister.
Commonwealth Development Corporation.
Yes, Commonwealth Development Corporation. And the meeting with the Prime Minister, Lord Howick was accompanied by the regional controller of CDC, Sir Peter Magnus-Zagan, and myself as the executive assistant in the CDC regional office in Lagos. And when we went to see the Prime Minister had with him the Minister of Finance, Chief Festus Okotiebo, and we were discussing how CDC could help Nigeria with investments. And the Prime Minister asked a number of questions about CDC-supported projects in West Africa, in the Gambia, Sierra Leone, Ghana, and southern Cameroons. And Lord Howick said to me, Anyaoku, you are dealing with this, will you answer the Prime Minister's questions? So I answered the Prime Minister's questions. And at the end of the meeting, as we were leaving, the Prime Minister called me back and said...
That's Tafawa Balewa.
Yeah, Tafawa Balewa. Yes. He called me back and said, young man, you know that we still depend on British consultants and British officers. Indeed, the permanent secretary of the Ministry of Finance, who accompanied Chief Festus Okotiebo to the meeting, was an Englishman, Mr. Clark. And the Prime Minister said to me, "You're working for a British government institution. You should come and work for your own country. I see you as a good material in our diplomatic service." And that was how I ended up in diplomatic service.
I mean, what is particularly amazing about all this is how at that reasonably young age, you were already you were able to be in the presence of people like the Prime Minister.
In November 1965, the first Commonwealth Secretary General, Arnold Smith of Canada, visited Nigeria, and in a conversation with the Prime Minister, he said to the Prime Minister that he was keen to build up at the newly established Commonwealth Secretariat a team of Commonwealth diplomats who, here I would like to quote his words, who would help him make nonsense of the myth of racial superiority.
Yes, I read that, actually.
So he said he wanted a Nigerian Foreign Service officer of the middle rank who would help him in that respect. That was how the Ministry of Foreign Affairs was asked by the Prime Minister's office to submit 3 names that the Prime Minister would decide. And 3 names were given to the Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister said, "Send Anyaoku." And this was how I went to the Commonwealth Secretariat, initially on secondment from the Nigerian Diplomatic Service.
So another stroke of good luck for you. And, you know, again, taking advantage of the fact that the Prime Minister kind of knew who you were. So he was very good and very, I mean, pivotal in your development.
Yes, he was. He was persuaded by the first Commonwealth Secretary General that he needed a Nigerian who would help him establish that peoples of different races were equal. And Prime Minister thought that I would fulfill that, and that was why and how I got seconded to the Commonwealth Secretary.